Hi everyone, I'm Douglas from WWF Hong Kong. Thanks for joining us. We are going to discuss some of the research we've been conducting on the Chinese white dolphin and the finless porpoise using some of the new and exciting sound trap data that we've been collecting for about a year now, yeah. So joining us to talk about that is Samantha Lee. She is the Conservation Manager for Oceans here at WWF Hong Kong, and Dr. Lindsay Porter, Senior Research Scientist from the University of St. Andrews. Welcome to you both. Let's talk about the sound traps themselves first. Where exactly are they located?
So we deployed 7 sound traps in the southern Lantau, which is also in the core habitat of dolphins, like in Funlau and also in So-Coast Island, and also somewhere close to the navigation channels of the vessels.
Right, and it's generally in the Tayo area, right?
Further down from Tayo.
Tayo, okay. And then around the tip. Now, Lindsay, give us sort of a state of play. I hate to say that way, but I mean, what's the situation with the Chinese white dolphin at the moment?
So we know from our long-term studies that both the government and independent researchers conduct that for the last 15 years, the Chinese white dolphin population in Hong Kong has been in decline. And this has probably been due to the many different impacts that man has on the dolphin's environment in those Lantau waters. But for the last few years, we've seen a rapid decline of habitat use in some areas, and in particular in northern Lantau. And what has happened is some of those dolphins appear to be using the southern Lantau, the Fanlau waters, more frequently than they did before.
And they've been driven out by, obviously, massive construction and development.
In the last 6 to 7 years, there's been increasing development within the North Lantau area, particularly large-scale construction projects like the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge and the third runway make that a very industrial area with lots and lots of construction work happening in the water column itself. So exactly where the dolphins, need to be to live and survive.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know you've both been conducting your own sound trap studies. What advantage does this sound data give us that we never had before?
Okay, for the Hong Kong government, they have been conducting a dolphin monitoring program based on the survey, a survey method called line transit survey, which you go out with the boat during daytime, and then you spot the dolphins when they surface on the sea. So you could count how many dolphins you spotted. For this sound trap device, it is great because you could deploy it underwater, and then it could collect the sound signal of the dolphins, vessels, fish, different type of vessels continuously in that 24 hours. And then the point is, it is great that because it kind of like it's a complementary data to the line transfer survey, because line transfer survey you could only see the dolphins above the seawater, but for the sound trap you could really try to investigate what they are doing, what they've been doing during the daytime and nighttime.
And I think it's important to note and to highlight here that dolphins and porpoise use sound as their primary sense. They need sound to be able to talk to each other, they need sound to be able to reflect off of their prey underwater, and also the ability to hear very precisely what is happening in their underwater environment, because particularly in Hong Kong waters you can only see a few centimetres. So to be able to understand your environment, you must be able to hear and receive very clear sound signals.
So Samantha, what does the data tell us about their behavior?
So actually this is one of the first comprehensive acoustic study that happened in the South Lantau waters, and then we found that there are quite a number of Chinese white dolphins. They like to stay in the area of Funlau to feed and socialize, and then we could also found that in the area in between the two so-called islands, Dai'ajiao and Xiu'ajiao, during the nighttime, the foraging activity was higher than during the daytime, and again because this is also these so-called islands is also the only area that you could find Chinese white dolphin and Finnish porpoise in Hong Kong. And we found some interesting pattern. For example, during the daytime, we can mainly find Chinese white dolphins. But starting from like evening to early morning, you could not detect dolphins anymore, but it comes in with the Finnish porpoise. So since that they don't quite like each other, they do not.
They don't like to mix.
Yes,
oh,
so
I
it's
see.
quite
Okay.
interesting, and it is really worth for further study. So this soundtrack data is really did provide some exciting information, preliminary information to investigate their habitat usage and also the behavior during daytime.
Foods, resources, right?
No, we think, from what we understand from analysis of stomach contents from those animals that strand, they have two different prey bases, so they're not competing for food from what we understand.
Oh, so as one leaves, the other one comes in.
Possibly. That could be to do with prey shifts, with the different fish moving, coming and going.
Oh, I
or
see.
it could just be that dolphins and porpoise are not friends, which happens in Scotland. Actually, our dolphins are not friends with the harbour porpoise that live there, and they tend not to be in the same habitat.
You can
at
just
the same
imagine
time.
gangs, one moves in, the other one moves out, the other one comes back, the other,
Exactly. Yes. We are mammals, and we have our own characters, and dolphins too have their sort of social needs and desires as well.
Own territory.
Well, as they have been sort of forced into this area around Fan Lao and the Socos, that puts them in conflict with a very heavy transportation channel. Now, as you all have already noted, sound is the way they navigate and socialize, and how does the noise produced by all that marine traffic affect the dolphins?
Well, if you imagine that we are in the MTR, so it's very noisy. There's the train noise, the track noise, the overhead announcements, people on their phones, people gaming, and if you and I are close to each other, it's quite easy for you and I to talk and to understand, the sound signals between both of us. But much further down the carriage, or even in the next carriage, we cannot hear clearly what is going on, because all that background noise is masking our ability to hear any sounds at distance. And that's exactly what it's like for dolphins and porpoise underwater in Hong Kong.
Yeah, this is also called masking effect, because if you have more and more different types of noise, actually it will cause some reduction of the radius that you could pick up the noise. For example, our expert also found that if the dolphin is right at the navigation channel, actually it will cause 80% of the reduction of the noise that the dolphins can receive. So it is quite massive. Yeah, and so we just worry that if there's a lot of noise, and it will certainly affect the behavior and also the echolocation capacity or the capability of the dolphins.
Yeah, can you imagine 80% of your sight being impaired?
Exactly.
Right.
How
do you get around?
How would we survive? How would we get around? How would we find food off the shelves?
Yeah.
Do we have any insight into how much stress this causes, and how much the marine traffic noise alters their behavior?
Stress is a very difficult thing to quantify if you can't measure it directly. But if you can imagine, and from what we understand from our visual surveys, is that dolphins surface, dive more deeply, so less surface intervals, when shipping traffic is around. And I think that's also supported by the sound trap data. They change their vocalizations, they stop feeding when there's shipping traffic around. So if you can imagine, that has an energetic cost. The dolphin has to work harder to dive longer, it's using up more energy, and it has a reduced feeding time. So those two factors cause stress in any animal. And if you are stressed and tired, you're far less likely to be able to understand what's going on in your environment. So it's a kind of double negative, and that the dolphins are becoming stressed, they're not feeding as much, and therefore may be more susceptible to being hit by vessel traffic, because they're not as aware or as alert as they might normally be.
And according to our sound trap data, some of the sound clips, we found that we could detect the feeding buzzes of the dolphins. But when the vessel approached, and then these feeding buzzes were gone. And when the vessel left, and then it starts to resume the detection of these feeding buzzes. So it could also reflect that this vessel pose some impact to dolphins. They may just stop, hold their foraging behavior and then wait until the vessel is gone, and then they have, for example, they have less reduction of the masking effect of noise environment, and they resume foraging again.
So there might be a nutritional impact on the mammals. Now, of course, there's a danger of strikes as well with all that traffic, but what have we proposed to do or to suggest to minimize the impact of traffic on the mammals?
We propose two feasible options to minimize the marine traffic to the animals. The first one is rerouting, which is to have the high-speed vessel coming out from Shenwan or Central just to go all the way to the south and out of the Hong Kong boundary and towards the Macau.
South of Sokos Islands.
Yes, so this way it would take about at least 8 minutes more for the passengers for this rerouting.
Of going to Macau and back, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And for the other option, which is a speed restriction, we propose to set up a speed restriction zone near the southern part of the Sokos, so that we hope that this will to pose less collision risk to the dolphins in the area, and then it will cost about 11 minutes, a little bit more than the usual speed.
Okay, so not a drastic change in transportation routes. Well, that's excellent. Thank you to you both for joining us, and thank you for joining us. If you have a question or comment, please write them down and send them to us in the comment section below. Lindsay Porter and Samantha Lee, thanks very much for
Thank you.
joining us. Bye.